Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday Night Rheumatology. I'm Jack Cush with Rheum Now. I'm joined by four friends, and we're going to talk about women in rheumatology, the XX factor. All month long, we've been featuring webinars on women in rheumatology on different topics. And tonight, we're going to have sort of a amalgamation of a lot of these thoughts in what we're calling a town hall meeting. I want to thank the sponsor of this whole month campaign and these webinars. That would be Bristol Myers Squibb, Be Now, the network of women that is run at BMS, for their generous support of this initiative and educational series. I know that you've seen probably a lot of blogs and videos and whatnot. We've got a therapeutic update series where we've also featured 10 videos on why there's a gender difference in different musculoskeletal conditions and drug response states. So I think you'll find that interesting. But tonight, again, it's our town hall meeting. Let's start with our panelists introducing themselves. Dr. Dow.
Hi, Kathryn Dow. So I've been the senior editor for the Women in Rheumatology campaign. I'm here based in Dallas, and thank you, Jack, for this opportunity to have this town hall and for letting me lead the charge on this.
Rachel.
I am Dr. Rachel Tate. I am junior editor for this month's campaign, and I am a clinical rheumatologist in West Palm Beach, Florida.
Gwenesta Melton.
Hi, I'm Gwenesta Melton. I am a recently retired practicing rheumatologist, have been an advisor for this extraordinary campaign in North Carolina.
And Deborah.
Hi, I'm Deborah Diet Desir, and one of these things just doesn't belong here because I have been invited to this campaign tonight. I spent 30 years in the private practice of rheumatology, and I am now full-time faculty member at Yale in the section of rheumatology.
Well, Deborah, we're glad to have you join us and sort of keep us on our toes. I do want to first acknowledge the hard work of Kathryn, Rachel, and Gwen, who've been really working tirelessly with the Rheum Now staff to put up the content that we have for this last month. I think it's really quite impressive. In this month, they've enlisted 24 different rheumatologists to contribute. We've had 12 blogs, 17 videos, 4 weekly surveys, I think like 28 questions. These 4 weekly webinars and almost 25 to 30 gems or quotes that appear on the website. It's been a gargantuan effort that they've led, and I think that the good thing about Rheum Now is the content stays up there for a long time and will continue to be promoted and reread and viewed. Please tell your friends and colleagues about this effort and about the content that is up there. I want to start by, this is a town hall, and town hall is a chance for everyone to air out their views. So in the audience, if you've got questions, please put your questions in the Q&A box, and we will address those throughout this town hall. We're going to touch on a lot of different areas that really were covered in our last 3 weeks. But I want to go around the horn and ask, Kathryn was a moderator, Rachel was a moderator, Gwen was a moderator. And I want each of you to talk about just quickly your session and what were some of the big things that happened in your session. And then Deborah, I want you to listen to them and then offer some critique about what are you not hearing, or what's surprising, or what do you want to focus on? So Kathryn, actually Rachel started the very first one.
Mm-hmm.
Rachel, tell us your impression.
I like Gwen's. So my moderating was really about balancing career and family obligations, whether that be young children all the way to aging adults, multi-generational, cultural differences, all sorts of things that kind of amalgamate into a person's life and as it reflects in their work. We talked about a number of things that can contribute to kind of balancing or struggling to balance. And it really became clear that this balance is really a struggle. It's really difficult to find. Women tend to have a harder time finding that. They tend to have less, they don't give themselves self-care, which is something that's really important. And self-care has many faces. chocolate, spirituality, bubble baths, all of these things are important. We talked a little bit about guilt, specifically mom guilt, but guilt as it relates to your personal life, taking into account your work experience. We talked about some strategies, including changing clinic hours, talking to clinic directors regarding negotiations, things that you can use as tactics. And then, of course, being mindful, being adaptive, and keeping a close knit group of friends and colleagues who are supportive of you is really important.
Yeah, one of the things that really stood out in that webinar and discussion and the survey questions were that women bear the brunt of everything, and you just take on way too much, and yet you do it, and most people don't know the scope of what you're doing. But women, way more than men, have situations where the job gets in the way of life, or the converse, where life gets in the way of the job, yet you power through it. And when you look at, what we've come up with this month is an overwhelming dossier on the need for women leadership and women being promoted and being treated fairly. The problem is women are doing too much, so much so asking them to do more seems almost impossible. And also asking them not to burn out also seems impossible. Kat, what did you do during yours?
Well, I want to go back to, why we did this to begin with, because I wanted to identify the challenges that women face and empower them with solutions. And I wanted to focus on three main issues: psychosocial support, which Rachel touched on with the career versus life. And then we want to talk about career development, which Gwen headed and moderated beautifully with our lawyer on contracts. And then we also talked about private practice versus academia. And then the third thing that I wanted to touch base on is leadership development. So for me, in my town hall, or my Tuesday night rheumatology, what we focused on was private practice versus academia, because so many of my fellows have asked me, should I stay in academics? Should I go into private practice? What are the pros and cons? Well, who better to ask than the people who've been there, done that, and who has their experience to be shared. So with my Tuesday night rheumatology, we had 4 different rheumatologists, 2 in private practice / academia, but mainly private practice, and 2 in academics. And basically they shared why they chose their career. They spoke about the hardships that they went through. One was actually an immigrant physician trying to get to the United States with a J-1 visa and establishing her research career. So that's Dr. Danila, amazing woman. We talked about gender inequity. We talked about mentorship, networking, and self-promotion. I mean, it was such an incredibly empowering session that I think everybody should watch that Tuesday night rheumatology session.
And Gwen, talk about your focus. And
so our focus was on contract negotiation. And let's be real, women have an incredibly poor track record when it comes to negotiation. And part of it has to do with the fact that we want to please. And we are happy to have someone give us a job and think that we can do the job, and we will accept whatever contractual agreement they've come up with. Whereas our male colleagues will say this is a starting point. So what we asked our wonderful attorney to do was to share with us the important points of a contract. And we focused a lot on an employee contract because many of us have to have an employee contract to work. The take-home message was absolutely everything in the contract is negotiable. Every single line, every section is negotiable. You must have flexibility with regards to what is going to be important to you. And it is also imperative that if we are trying to focus on your work-life balance, that you have the ability to be flexible with your schedule. And salary may not be the most important thing. It is imperative that you get an attorney to review your contract, because you do not wish to have someone come in and bail you out of a situation that you should not have been in. We also focused on the lovely non-restrictive covenant. And that is going to be another chapter that we further discuss, because that is going to have some implication with particularly some ground rules that may take place with legislation. So that's going to be something different that we will be having to discuss in the future. I wish for you to look at that podcast so that you can get all of your beautiful pearls, the ones that I am wearing on my neck, so that you can focus on what is important for you and your employee contract and when you have to renegotiate a contract.
I'm glad I did not have to break out my jewelry for this meeting. That wasn't known, but yeah, I think that that was an eye opener, and the issue on non-compete clauses was great because it's an evolving story that's going to change, and everyone's got a very strong opinion about that. So it's really kind of interesting. Initial comments from you, Deborah, listening to some of this. What do you think?
So, I have, I guess, a word to say about each one. And for Rachel, I think that it's very interesting topics. And I think that in the struggle to balance, the key thing, one of the key things that women or people need are some flexibility. I think it's exceedingly important for especially young people to find their own path and be at peace with it. So don't let other people try to define your path for you or to criticize your path. Find where you want to be and then be at peace with it. And I think you said something very, very key. Don't try to take everything on. And I also think we need institutional changes. When I was a medical student at Yale, I was on the Dean's Committee on the Status of Women. At that time, it was an ad hoc committee, I think, and now it's developed into a whole office. But there was a young faculty member by the name of Phyllis Bodell, who died tragically at age 44, but did a lot of work on endogenous, what were then called endogenous pyrogens. But she did many key things while she was at Yale. But one of the things she did was expand opportunities for women in medicine by changing the path, changing the time requirements, making women part-time work to be as respected as full-time work. So those are some of the thoughts I had while you were speaking. Kathryn, you made me think a lot about my own path, because I started I was a fellow with Steve Malawista, who I know Jack Cush knew. And I was going into academic medicine. In fact, I had a Robert Wood Johnson faculty development grant as a fellow. And then I abruptly decided that I did not want to do that. I wanted to be in private practice. So I went to a staff model HMO for 7 years. And then I opened a private practice, which I ran for many, many decades. And now I'm back in academic medicine, a different sort of academic medicine than I started in, because I'm a clinician and I started out as a basic researcher. So you just took me back in time. And and I think that women need more exposure and more mentorship as they try to make these decisions. And a lot of fellows at the large academic institutions don't get exposed to private practice and what that means and what it entails. But they end up in it anyway. And then for Gwen, you also took me down memory lane, because when I went for that very first job when I left fellowship, they offered me something and I accepted it. Didn't even occur to me to negotiate it. And I've learned a lot since then. When I negotiated the sale of my practice and moving back into academics, it was a 20-month negotiation, because the most important thing that you said is everything is negotiable. And I think that as we negotiate contracts, we have to make decisions about what's important to us. And then, what can you trade? Where your lines are, what lines can't be crossed. Those are very, very important. And that's just not a matter for women. I think that's a matter as more and more people are not in private practice, as more and more people are in large practices and large institutions, contract negotiation becomes critical.
So I think the greatest negotiation line I heard is actually the title of Rachel's video that she's doing or just did. Rachel, do you want to tell everybody what the title of that video is?
Okay, I'm learning this, but no is a complete sentence.
Oh,
And ironically, it was on the desk. It stuck with me. It was on the desk of a judge that I know. And I thought, wow, that's influential. If someone in that area also needs a reminder that no is a complete sentence.
I heard that on a podcast this week with Fran Lebowitz, the famous artist and whatnot. So yeah, that's a really good one. I want to start by, total disclosure. During this month, Kathryn has badmouthed me as a miserly employer. I hired her twice and underpaid her. Basically, it was shekels and tacos was her salary, but in return, she had flexibility in her job. I've heard and read this year about this month about we don't have enough women on the programs that we're doing, and that is a crime. And there's a great blog by Nicola Dalbeth where she turned down authorship in a major publication because there weren't enough men. I'm sorry, there were only men on the editorial board of this major book. And she said, when you find it right, to rightly represent all of us, then you can include me in your effort. And they clearly needed her. I reviewed the last 4 years of Room Now Live, the meeting that I run, and I did the math. How many women are on the faculty at Room Now Live? I'm ashamed to say it's 24 to 38%. And the question is, how did you 4 women let me get away with all of this?
Well, a better question is also, what are you going to do about it now that you are aware?
But can I ask you a question? Is as medical schools become 50 to 60% female, do you think that will naturally change, or do you think that you'll still be not hiring? No.
Well, I've only hired women, so I wrote a blog about why I hire women, and so I'm proud of that. But I think when it comes to like the leadership stuff, being first author in a major clinical trial, being the chairman of a committee, being on the faculty. The problem is a lot of these, men beget more men on programs and on committees and on leadership positions, because these are the people I shoot pool with and run with, and I know, and there's more of them. There are women that are interested in gout and lupus and rheumatoid and spondylitis, and so there's no excuse that I not have more women on the programs. I can tell you it's hard. It's easier for me to do a hit list on, all right, we're going to do a spondyloarthritis symposia. I need these 3 topics covered. I can think of 4 people for almost every lecture, and 3 of them are always going to be men, and maybe only 1 is going to be a woman. But maybe this means I have to work hard. I have to work harder as a meeting organizer to find more talent. And that's one of the biggest problems we have in everything that all of us are doing, is where is the next generation of talent? And it is going to change. The gender dominance is going to evolve. But there's going to be it's like Malcolm Gladwell's The Dynamics of Change and the Tipping Point. It takes forever for gender equity in representation at leadership positions and studies and research and publications and lecturing. It's going to take a longer time than it needs to. And the catalyst for change needs to be, as you said, Deborah, but I want to hear what you guys want to do, because I'm saying I'm guilty. How are you going to change me?
So I'm going to step on your toes right now and make you cry. When you say I can come up with 4 guys right away, I go to my list and I can come up with 4 women immediately. And the reality is that the women haven't been asked because the guys keep asking their friends. So when we started talking about who to put on this panel, who to ask for the blogs, I had names for every section. And it has to do with the fact that my friends are women, and I am making sure that I have women that are leaders, women that I know that are excelling in various areas of rheumatology. And so I was able to come up with names quickly. So, and it's who we're friends with. And that's the reason why the Association of Women exists. And we've been promoting and trying to help forward the women so that we actually can use the ladies that we know and the network that we know. And then we're trying to introduce those women to you and any of the other advisory boards that are speaking bureaus, et cetera, that you want for educational programs so we can share.
So
So
2 points.
I would say
Jack.
it's not nepotism, number one, because when you hire people for these positions, it really usually isn't friends. I would say, yeah, 40, maybe 50% are people I know well, but usually I am going after the people who wrote the papers, the people who are on the committees, the people who write the chapters. And again, that's the same self-fulfilling problem, right?
Yes,
So,
and those women need to get in there.
And it's beyond, this is not friendship, this is business. And this is good business. Deborah, go ahead.
I was just going to say 2 quick things. No may be a complete sentence, but Gwen doesn't hear that. And the second thing is that the same thing that Gwen was talking about also applies to race and ethnicity.
Yeah.
So that
Absolutely.
people tend to call on people who are like them, who look like them, that they socialize with. So I think that it extends beyond gender.
It's about sponsorship too, it's like there's so much, like in my Tuesday night rheumatology, we talked about, women being mentored to death, but none of them sponsor them. And we have to be promoting them.
Explain the difference.
Yeah.
So mentoring is, I'm going to give you advice on what you should do. But sponsorship is, I have this great person, you need to hire this person, you need to approach them. So this is like promoting them and elevating them to be in the front so that people can see them, highlight their strength. It's not just about talking to just that one person, but it's about talking to other people to give that person exposure. Now, Jack, you are probably one of my biggest sponsors, to be honest with you.
Yes,
you are the one who got me in front of lecturing a lot, got me involved in a lot of committees at the ACR, got me involved in a lot of things. So, I mean, kudos to you. I wish there are more men who are like that. And I wish that there were more people, I would say, that are like that.
He's a great sponsor.
But that's also a trait that not everyone has. So honing in on mentorship and sponsorship, we can't wait for natural selection. We've got to create the environment for people to be able to want to do that and to do that. And I think the way that we do that is through campaigns like this. Awareness is key. We have to start with awareness, and then we can build up to how do we create change. That's what tonight's about.
I saw an interesting quote today, and it applies to us as rheumatologists. And the quote is something, it says, basically, we cannot succeed, meaning rheumatologists cannot succeed when half of us are held back.
Oh, love it.
The idea is, and that is true, I mean, it's not enough that you be a woman in rheumatology. You've got to, as a woman in rheumatology, promote and advocate for other women in rheumatology. That you are the authors, you are the leaders, you are the speakers, you are on the committees, and again, this, if you don't pay attention to it now, the future depends on what you do today. That's Gandhi's quote, and there has to be a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
And the question is, that's what this campaign and this month has been about. That's why we're going to continue to promote this. But I think the question again still is, I want to get hard about what can we do other than, I can tell you an example. We send out flyers about Room Now Live, like look for our meeting, register for our meeting. Here's 2 good speakers, and the flyers go out with 2 or 3 pictures on it. And we got roasted in social media because we sent out a flyer that had 3 men, you know, and they were like, where's the women? Of course, there were women on the program, but to be fair, and I think they were accurate in pointing out that it was only 26% of the program. But, you know, that makes me, the organizer, and Artie Kavanaugh, the organizer, really uncomfortable. And that's our impetus to work at this harder the next time. And when I don't have a woman to give that spondylitis lecture, I am calling Dr. Melton, and maybe she can give me suggestions. But unless, you know, the feet are held to the fire at the organizational level and at the institutional level, these kind of changes are not going to happen. And then when it does happen, you as women in rheumatology need to heed the call.
So
That's true. There's actually, do you know the AAMC on their website, they actually have toolkits to, number one, how to promote yourself, toolkits on how to become a leader, toolkits on how to write grants. And that's something that is being thought of by multiple different American colleges. And so one of the things that I have noticed during this whole campaign, I was looking at the American College of Cardiology. They have a whole committee on women in cardiology. The American Academy of Pediatrics, they have women in pediatrics. They have full committees. I mean, right now we're depending on, AWARE, Association of Women in Rheumatology, to do the lead. But I think the ACR needs to step up and have a committee on this too, where we would have toolkits, where we would have seminars for women, networking opportunities, coaching. I just think that the national associations, state and society associations need to go ahead and step up.
So Kathryn, you seeing the slide that you made from the AAMC?
Yes, I did make that. Yes, absolutely.
Right. So again, women in academia, the numbers, this is a sort of reflecting what's going on in medical school. It's in the 40 to 50% range as entering classes. But as Dr. Desir says, it's going to go over 50, if not hit 60 in the next 10 to 20 years. But if you look at the faculty level and the higher appointments, now we're not at 40, 50. We're now at 18, 20, 37, for department chairs, deans, and whatnot. And then it's even worse if you look at women of color in leadership positions, it's less than 5%. Now, and then what's the women in specialties number? There's another AAMC that there are certain specialties that are female dominant. Family medicine, psychiatry, pediatrics, rheumatology, it should be actually in this group, but there are male dominant ones. And this is a very hard thing if women are trying to actually break into something like neurosurgery or emergency medicine and whatnot. Again, these are the things that all of us need to be aware of in having these discussions.
But it's so much more than just who's doing what and what specialty. I mean, women are also facing a gender pay gap. So even though all across the board, physician compensation went down 2.4% last year, there's still a difference between 28 and 26% in that pay gap, which can lead to almost $100,000 a year. Susan Chenoy, who's an amazing pediatric rheumatologist out of Washington, and I were just talking about this. I mean, that is a huge difference potentially for women, which may be hindering them from making some of these choices, making the decision to step up. We have to have transparency with that as well. It's not enough to sit in the corner and say, oh, there's a pay gap.
Pay is a hard thing. It's like Gwen was saying earlier, advocating for yourself is hard for any of us, maybe even harder for women. But if you don't, who will? Your mother's not in the room negotiating your salary with you. But if she was, she'd be slapping someone in the head. And she'd be asking that chairman, well, what do you make? Of course, he'd say, well, I'm the chairman. That's an inappropriate question. What did you make when you were taking the position my daughter is taking? And then he'd have to defend that. Obviously you have to go into these situations with knowledge, and you can find out what rheumatologists are making by the city, and then
Right,
by the
easily.
job. It's really not a hard thing. So there's no reason that shouldn't happen. The hardest problem, how should women handle the issue of they may not be full-time?
Right. So I was looking at the specialties that are listed, and a lot of those specialties are friendly for a work-life balance if the woman is taking charge of the family. My husband's a nephrologist, recently retired. He did nephrology. I wouldn't dream of doing it because of the demands that were going to be asked of me as the head of our household, our domestic household. I could do it with rheumatology, immunology, but I would never want to do the challenges of nephrology. We tried as a married couple to do internal medicine for 2 or 3 years together, and we thought there will be no procreation in this family if we keep trying to both do internal medicine. So we decided to do different specialties, and some of the specialties are being done by women based on their also dual desire to have a family, and some of the specialties that you listed were quite demanding. Now, I got to be honest, that radiology, I could see us doing that. I could see us actually trying to do that, but the problem may be that the competition for it, there may not be the right amount of sponsorship for women to do the radiology. I don't know. It's a little complicated, but some of those things being chosen.
There's also the time when women are trying to have children and start a family. I mean, that's about the same time as when, you're trying to establish yourself in your academic career or your career. So the two aren't necessarily compatible. Yes. And so a lot of times women will take a back step and just allow other people to pass them by. That's what I think is happening. So that way they can take care of their family. And then once their kids are grown, that's when women are kind of entering back into the workforce with full effort. So what do you think about that?
I think there's one other issue or pitfall. Somebody mentioned part-time work. And I did that for a while, but especially when I opened my own practice, I could choose to go to, there was nobody else telling me, you've got to come here and make money for the practice. So I could choose to go on the Bronx Zoo school trip because that was my choice. And when I hired other women, I made sure they had a similar choice. But I think, especially in academia, women have to be very careful, because sometimes being part-time means being paid part-time, but the work is, and that is a trap that is to be avoided.
Yes.
We're going to go, let's, Shannon, why don't you bring up slide 2? And this is a slide of the survey that we did just today and yesterday. We only got 83 respondents, and we're going to get more, but this is usually enough of a sample to give you a picture. The first question we asked is, what is a priority for you as a rheumatologist in choosing your job? And everyone, whether you're a male or female, I just show you the conglomerate here because it was almost no difference between men and women. 2/3 want work-life balance. And then slight differences between men and women when it comes to either career opportunity and advancement, and also flexibility. Those are slightly different between men and women. This particular survey was, unlike other surveys, was dominated by women answering the survey to over 2/3. In the past, it was like almost 50-50. So we asked them, what job are you seeking in the future? And you can see the differences between men and women. The pie charts don't look the same. And if you look at the table underneath, it'll say more women are looking for part-time positions than men. But still a surprising number of men, 38%, are looking forward to a part-time position. More men, therefore, are interested in full-time positions. But when it comes to seeking leadership positions, I find it interesting that that women are actually more likely to be seeking leadership positions. Gwen, do you find this surprising?
Yeah, I did find that surprising. And when I saw it, the first thing I wanted to, and I know you didn't stratify it, is what was the age spread. Because if we have older men maybe wanting to transition and slow down, and that may be their reason and rationale for wanting to do part-time, and with that, they may not be that interested in doing leadership. Whereas the women, there may be that whatever the age is, maybe at the age where it's the children are been launched and they're ready to start looking for leadership. And that's the first thing I thought was, I wonder what the age spread is.
Yeah, and it's likely, we didn't ask for age on this. It's likely that the men are going to be in that 60-year-old and above bracket. And most of the, the tsunami of white-haired retiring male rheumatologists. And then, and the women are likely to be in an average age more like in the mid-40s rather than, so obviously there's different things here. I guess we should go right into this, the next slide, which has to do with leadership. And the question is, why are there not more women of prominence and in leadership roles? Is it because they're not given the opportunity, or because they're overburdened with with running families and running the lives and being the CEO of everything except for the company that they work for? So when we ask people, tell us something where you've assumed a leadership role, or the best thing where you've assumed the leadership role. And actually men and women equally, about a third of them said, well, I don't really have something I can point to. But of the other options we gave them, men were more likely to be pointing to that they were currently a chair or a director or a leader of an organization or a practice. Women, half as likely. Men and women equally are on committees and were officers and that sort of thing, or they've been on rheumatology advisory boards. Women were more likely actually to be first author on a paper. I found this a little bit surprising, and this could be a sampling bias on this particular. But I think that this answer confirms what we've put up on the website a lot this month, that women are less likely to assume leadership roles, or not assume, but be offered leadership roles. That's really important. Next, there we go. If you were given the opportunity to assume a leadership position, would you take it? Yes, in green, in magenta, or no in green, or possibly if they made concessions or if it was to my liking. Men and women were equal here as far as how they answered. I thought that was surprising, right? But maybe the next one isn't surprising. Here's the other leadership question. What are the barriers to your seeking leadership? Both men and women, it's a large blue slice of the pie. It's 70 to 76% say it's the burdensome time demands that make it hard for me to be involved in leadership. But men, the only other things, there was like only two other things, and that was no opportunity in 19%, and 4 or 5% that pointed to a gender bias. They have very few other reasons. On the other hand, it's the kaleidoscope of options with women, that the other 30% have quite a mixture of other reasons why, including maybe the largest one, 11%, saying that there is a clear gender bias that they've experienced. Right? But daycare work, no opportunities, no mentoring, these are all factors that they'll all deal with. So where should we be headed when it comes to leadership?
I just want to point out one thing about roles, and when people go for roles, there is a tendency for women, or for most women, to feel like they have to fit 100% of the criteria when they are actually going for a leadership position or a role. They may not put their hat in if they don't feel like they meet that criteria. But men generally, if they meet 60% of the overall criteria for a position, they're more than likely to put their hat in for the role if it's a role they want. So I think we also need to be aware of our own bias, and when it comes to that kind of almost an amplification of situations for people. That's an important piece that we didn't capture in these types of questions.
Right. I mean, you'd have to ask a lot of questions of a lot of people to really hone down. We can turn the slide off now, Shannon. So where are we with leadership? I think what I've seen this month as an observer to all that you guys have done, is that there's a lot of need. There's certainly a need for leadership. There's a need for opportunity. But the vast majority of women in rheumatology aren't seeking leadership because they've got too much on their plate. How do we make this front of mind priority in moving the discipline forward? Again, when half of us have no voice, how good can rheumatology really be?
Yeah,
So,
you have to have
Dr.
opportunity. You have to have opportunity, and you also have to give women equal pay, just kind of like what we had talked about, because, you know, some of us have to support our families. There are several comments in the Q&A where it's like, there are some women who are single parents, you know, and trying to juggle jobs, trying to find support. That's definitely very difficult for people who are in single parent households. So not only do you provide opportunity, but you have to provide them just compensation to make it worth their while.
And for single parents, a workplace that has daycare as an opportunity may really be a lifesaver for families. It's kind of the combination.
Should there be, at the practice, hospital, institution, societal level, should there be the equivalent to the Rooney Rule in football, where you've got to, if you're going to have a leading position as a general manager or coach or assistant coach, you have to interview a minority candidate, not just another, 50-year-old white guy for the position, and then after you've interviewed and whenever they instituted that rule, and there's a lot of argument in the NFL as to whether it has really had any effect. The fact is that when they didn't have the Rooney Rule, there were almost no African-American coaches. Now there are many African-American coaches and Hispanic coaches as well. And they're still the minority, but you can point to many of them. But do you need to have quotas? Do you need to push on, a medical conference needs to be 50-50? Our next, our last 4 presidents were males. Let's make the next one a female. Should we be forcing that, or should we be demanding? How do we make that happen? Deborah, what do you think? The hard one.
I think it is a hard one, because I think if you have something like, sports analogies don't really help me, but I'm going to go with I would say, believing what you say about this Rooney Rule thing, but it doesn't necessarily make any difference, because you're just interviewing the person because you have to. And I'm not sure that that's what led to more African-American coaches in the NFL. So I think that, do I think that if you've had 4 male presidents of the ACR, you must have a female one? Absolutely not. I think that I'm not sure what that would necessarily achieve. I think you need to look at why you've only had 4 male presidents of the, and this has not been the case with the ACR, so no one misunderstand. Right. So let's just say with the medical society, I think you should look at how you're choosing your presidents, that you're only ending up with a certain type when there are many qualified people of almost any demographic. So I think rather than requiring that, okay, we've had 4, now if you've had 4 women in a row, must you have a man? I think that you should look at the needs of the society at a given time and see who's stepping forward, willing and able to serve. And, I do think that time constraints of being in leadership are keeping a lot of people who would be wonderful leaders out. Because if you are a young woman with young children trying to make your footprint in academia, you don't have in academics, you're not going to have time to be, the head of a committee in the.
But I think in coming up with those committees and coming up with leadership, you have to be like all the women on this call, and also like me. in that you have to be fearless. You have to be
Yes.
outspoken. You know, the quote that we have up this month, I guess, well-behaved women seldom make history. You have to be unafraid to say the thing that needs to be said.
You also have to have time and a certain amount of control over your own professional life that a lot of people building a career don't have. So when I was a young volunteer for the ACR, I could take time away from my practice. There was no one to tell me that
you couldn't do it.
Can't do that. The only thing that told me I couldn't do that was the economics of it. And I was in a position and willing to do, because I loved the ACR and I was passionate about the things I was volunteering for, I was willing to make that sacrifice. But if you've got a section chief or a department chair saying, what do you mean you're going to, you're going off to work on these guidelines and it's going to require X amount of your time. So I think that part of it is having institutional support in what you're doing, and hoping that it fits in and having the institution value different choices that people make. Because right now, a lot of academic institutions value a couple of things, and they need to expand.
Well, and I just also want to point out, we talk a lot about young women, but women, as one of our attendees noted, also tend to be caregivers for older parents and older family members. So that it may not be the steady transition of, oh, my kids are out of the house, I'm good. There is a lot to consider, as you said, Dr. Desir.
And somebody mentioned on-site daycare. On-site infant toddler care is wonderful. I took advantage of it, but to the mothers of young little guys, let me tell you, when they're teenagers, they need more of your time. So
gotta be watched. Gotta be watched.
Dr. Dow told me that, and Kat, I'm sure you're right. I'll tell you when I get there.
I think we need to impose a quota for Room Now Live where Jack has to ask at least 50% women.
Well, I think he will now.
He will.
But being fearless also in something you said, Jack, you are very good about promoting the people around you. And I mean, I've benefited from that. Kat's benefited from that. We have a lot of us who have, but there are not enough of us around to do that inherently. That's something that you're so good at it. And it's a very special trait. I'm going to get choked up because you're one of my favorite people, but don't let that go any further. But I really feel like we need community engagement. That's why networking is so important. That's why these discussions, having the support of ACR, continuing to push ACR or ULAR, everybody, right? This is a community. We have to work as a community.
There was a question on the Q&A that says, how do we get more people involved, especially younger people? What do you suggest?
Involved in
leadership positions, in volunteering, in advocacy, just in everything.
Speaking of, if you want to get involved in advocacy, first of all, AWIR definitely does that, but I'll let Gwen speak to that. But from the standpoint of the ACR, we are on the Hill at least twice a year. Every September, there's a fly-in. And not only would we like representatives from every state, we'd like you to bring your patients with you, because there is the senators and the Congress people love to see us, but they even more love to see patients. And the patients have stories that can move people. So our fly-in is open to everybody. And I know we all get 1,000 emails a day, and it's easy to miss them, but the emails go out asking for volunteers for advocacy. And it doesn't have to be in Washington. There's advocacy at the local and state level also. So I would encourage people to get to know, first of all, know who your representatives are. Don't just know your senator and your congressperson. Know know the people in your town, the people in your city, know the people in your state government. They love to hear from constituents, and invite them to, if you have an office, invite them to your office, or all of them have local offices. You can go to them and talk to them about issues. And also you can bring with you, the ACR will be happy to send you talking points. You can bring those with you when you go and talk to elected representatives. They absolutely love to hear from constituents. It's really easy to do. And the next thing you know, you'll be holding fundraisers for them and meet and greets and all kinds of things.
Well,
So in fairness to, sorry, I just want to add a couple of things, even for ACR. ACR has a 101 training for the fellows, which gives them an opportunity to go to the Hill and go with a senior person to their state legislator and their federal legislators. AWARE also has a training program for young, and we do it in the fellowship, and we've applied it to a few of the fellowships, and we're trying to expand it to other fellowships where they do modules to teach them about their engagement with legislation, their engagement. We're developing cultural sensitivity. We also have a module to help them learn how to interact with pharma, because they're not the enemy. They're not the enemy. And what I think ACR has done, which is very interesting, is a lot of the past probably 5 to 6 or 10 years of leadership for the Government Affairs Committee have been fellows who were asked to go to Washington, did the 101 fellowship. And where the hell do you think Blair came from? She did that. Yes. Yeah, and we got her opinion about advocacy, but that's where it came from. And ACR was instrumental in doing that. And we have expanded, AWARE has expanded it so that they have a little bit more training, but that's how you do it. You ask them, you invite them to come, just like Dr. Desir said, you invite them to come. And that's how you start getting the young folks to step in.
And we absolutely need more volunteers in advocacy, because especially if we're in Washington, they want to hear from their constituent.
Yes.
So I was able to get around that by saying, look, I've got offices in three districts. And so even though I only live in one district, I have patients in your district. So, you have to listen to me. So, but and for other ways to get involved is the ACR puts out a call for volunteers every year. And if there's something
it's out now,
if there's something that you're passionate about, if there's something you have an interest in, volunteer.
So Kathryn asked, what can someone do to be more involved and whatnot? I'm going to give you the flip side to that. I put a lot of things in front of a lot of people with the hope that they'll latch on and run with it. And I'm frequently told, with a line that we all use, I'm too busy. And we're all very busy. But the problem with I'm too busy is it becomes a catchphrase that continues to get you out of jail so that you can rein in the things that it's a priority issue. But you have to make, if leadership is an issue for you, then you're gonna have to make it a priority. If work-life balance is a leadership is an issue for you, you're going to have to make it a priority. If institutional change, you're going to have to make it a priority. Once you say, what I would say is, if you use the term "I'm too busy," realize that has an expiration date. You can't use it forever. It's done. And the point is, if it has an expiration date, you have to be of the mindset to continually reinvent yourself. At this point in my life, I have to be a caregiver for my elderly sick parent. But 2 years from now, my story is going to change. And how am I going to reinvent myself towards a greater good? And again, the problem is that women are the real architects of society, and you have to be mindful of that and readjust where your priorities are going to be.
But Dr. Desir also brought up that you have to be flexible. So a woman's job does not end between 9 and 5. That is not how that works. So having Sunday morning meetings at 6 a.m. Central may have to be part of your leadership development, because it is something that is, you're asking people to reprioritize who want to be a leader. I'm good with that. I agree with you. But we've got to create an environment where that flexibility on everyone's part is also supportive flexibility.
I like how she snuck that in for the other day while I am up at
Yeah, our team
12:55
want to have a
in the
meeting at
UK doing this.
6 a.m. on Sunday morning. Yeah, I just said good luck.
We all met at 6 a.m., Jack, except you.
That's right.
Because we get it done. But
And you got your meeting done, and you did the important thing that you needed to do. So that's fine.
and
I
we
did
thank
not
you
need
for
to
your
be there.
support.
That's good. So again, we have 4 minutes left. I need closing comments. I need you to address an unmet need or inspire the audience to take it to the next level. Who wants to go first?
I
So,
can go first.
Go ahead.
Okay. So the one thing that I was taught by this campaign is that there is a huge unmet need that women have that hasn't been adequately addressed. And I think that women don't know that there are resources available.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that major societies like the ACR, even state level societies, should have a task force, should have the resources on their website to direct these women to be able to have these toolkits so that they can go ahead and forward their careers, to advance and to get psychosocial support and mentorship. There was a comment on the Q&A right now that says, Jack, would you mind having some kind of mentorship for people who are in solo practice because they feel like they're alone and this is their community? So I think that, I'm so glad Dr. Desir is here because, she's like an incredible woman, an incredible leader and role model. And I think that she will affect change in her leadership. And she has affected change. And as president-elect for the ACR, I just think that this is just like, I'm just in love with you. I'm just like, wow, because you are a role model and you're somebody I look up to, and you're somebody who, we don't have enough women leader role models. Just like at UT Southwestern here, we have Black men in white coats. And this has been huge in promoting, community children who are of African-American heritage to go into medicine because they see somebody in that leadership role. And so hats off to you for being a woman of color and for being a leader. So yes.
Rachel.
Yes. And when she comes to us during her presidency and needs our help, we are going to be there for her. We are going, when she asks, I need volunteers for this, I need blah, blah, blah. We're going to use our networks to help make her shine, keep her shine. And then we're going to, when she gets off of that presidency, we're going to get her on Room Now and Aware, and then she's going to help continue this craziness with us.
Put us on, Coach.
No, I'm going to say a word about the workforce and how we can inspire it. My partner and I volunteer with the Yale medical students at a clinic, in a free clinic, and they're medical students. There are nursing students, there are public health students who come and do blood pressure screening and glucose screening. But I watched her inspire a young woman to have an interest in rheumatology. And I think that as we interact more with young people, we can, if you can see someone doing it, you can be it. And that was inspirational to me, just watching her pique this young woman's interest and training other rheumatologists. So in closing, I would say, remember the workforce.
Yes.
So mine is workforce related too. I think a lot of what we've heard from this campaign are women and men actually who are looking for part-time positions or even the concept of job sharing. I think we need to be a little bit more transparent about what that looks like, what that could be, educational tools, as Kat had said, to really kind of enhance that. I've been fortunate I've had a part-time position since I had my baby, and I hadn't anticipated it because I like to be a go-getter, but it doesn't mean I'm any less of a go-getter. But I'm able to share that with my family as well. And having that ability has really opened doors for me. And so having that opportunity for other people is going to only improve and enhance our workforce. And Dr. Melton, I'm sure you have some thoughts on that, but that is my takeaway.
Yes, so I have some thoughts on the flexibility of shared jobs to help with shortage. And also Dr. Cush and I have had lots of experience with using advanced practitioners and where they can be put in there to help us out. I'm looking at this Tuesday night, rheumatology, revolutionary advances in therapy.
That means we are done. I want to
Yeah,
thank
and
our
I
panel
see,
for a
and
great
I see
discussion.
3 men's names on there. What the devil?
I want to thank our panel for a great discussion. And those of you who've had enough of too many women for the month of April, we're going to move into, I'm only kidding. We're going to move into May. And we're going to, in the month of May, we're going to be featuring a lot of the content that was had in the Room Now Live meeting. And we're going to start with this in a rehash session on rheumatoid arthritis next Tuesday night, same time, same place, same invite. Dr. Kevin Dean on early RA, Stanley Cohen on JAK inhibitors, and Dr. Michael Brenner on the pathogenesis of RA, especially fibroblasts and stromal cells. So we'll see you next Tuesday. Thank you, everyone. Great discussion.
Oh, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.